of the steel industry in India. Introduction. The world crude production has reached 1950.5 million tons for the year 2021. China is the largest producer, accounting for around 57% of the global production, and India is the second largest steel producer with 6.5% of global steel production. Indian steel industry has been significant growth over the past few decades, driven by country's rapid economic development, infrastructure expansion, and government initiative. Furthermore, to know more about the steel industry and its players in the domestic and international players, stay tuned with India Business Insights. What is steel? One of the primary sources behind industrialization has been the use of metals. Steel has occupied a top spot among metals and is the world's most important engineering and construction material. It is used in every aspect of our lives. Steel production and consumption are frequently seen as measures of the country's economic development because it is both a raw material and an intermediary product. Iron is made by removing oxygen and other impurities from iron ore. When iron is combined with carbon, recycled steel, and small amounts of other elements, it becomes steel. Later, after casting and rolling, the steel is delivered as coil, plate, sections, and or bars. Steel is produced via two main routes: the blast furnace basic oxygen furnace route and the electric arc furnace route. Steel is not a single product. There are more than 3,500 different grades of steel with many different physical, chemical, and environmental properties. History of steel. The development of steel can be traced back 4,000 years to the beginning of the Iron Age. By the 17th century, iron's properties were well understood, but increasing urbanization in Europe demanded a more versatile structural metal. By the 19th century, the amount of iron being consumed by expanding railroads provided metallurgists with the financial initiative to find a solution to iron's brittleness and inefficient production processes. The most breakthrough in the steel history came in 1856 when Henry Bessemer developed an effective way to use oxygen to reduce the carbon content in iron. The modern steel industry was born. Bessemer designed a pear shaped receptacle referred to as a converter in which iron could be heated while oxygen could be blown through the molten metal. As oxygen passed through the molten metal, it would react with carbon, releasing carbon dioxide and producing a purer iron. In the 1860s, German engineer Carl Wilhelm Siemens further enhanced steel production through his creation of the open hearth process. The open hearth process produced steel from pig iron in the large shallow furnaces. This method allowed for production of much larger quantities, although the production process itself was much slower. By 1900, the open hearth process had primarily replaced the Bessemer process. The majority of global steel production, about 66%, is now produced in basic oxygen facilities. The development of a method to separate oxygen from nitrogen on an industrial scale in the steel industry globally, the showed a growth of 3.6% over 2020. The revenue for the steel products sold is US dollars 2.5 trillion. The added value of its production process was almost US dollar 500 billion, and it employed more than 6 billion people around the world. For every 2 jobs in the steel sector, 13 more jobs are supported throughout its supply chain. In total, some 40 million people work within the steel industry's global supply chain, generating over US dollar 1.2 trillion of added value. Steel industry is considered an indicator of economic progress. It is an integral part of the global circular economy due to its ability to reduce, reuse, remanufacture, and recycle. In 1950s, China and India produced the same quantity of steel. Today, in 2022, China is world's largest producer and consumer of steel with the crude steel production of 1032.8 mtpa, followed by India 118.1 mtpa. Average world steel use per capita has steadily increased. 50 steel use is projected to increase by around 20% compared to present levels in order to meet the needs of our growing population. The market is competitive. With the presence of numerous players worldwide, the producers of steel face stiff competition from the producers of substitutes like aluminium, glass, concrete, wood, and plastic. Some strategies adopted by key players to cut the competition is of capacity expansion and decarbonization. Some prominent players in the global iron and steel market include ArcelorMittal, China, Bao Steel Group Corporation Limited, Nippon Steel Corporation, HPIS Group, Jiangsu Shagang Group, POSCO Holdings Limited, Tata Steel, etc. Steel industry in India. The first successful attempt was made in 1875 in setting up an iron and steel works at Barakhar by Bengal Iron and Steel Company. This was taken over by Bengal Iron Company in 1889. This was the first attempt to produce pig iron in India through modern methods. But the iron and steel industry in India had a real beginning in the year 1907 after the establishment of Tata Iron and Steel Company, TISCO, at Sakchi in Bihar. It was the dream of late Jamshedji Tata, the father of Indian steel industry, whose career was a true example of industrial romance. His dream came into reality in form of establishment of TISCO, the first large-scale industrial unit in producing iron and steel by using latest scientific methods in India. The Indian steel industry is classified into three categories: major producers, main producers, and secondary producers. As of April 2022, India was the world's second largest producer of crude oil. In financial year 22, the production of crude steel and finished steel stood at 133.6 mt and 120.01 mt, respectively. The growth in the Indian steel sector has been driven by the domestic availability of raw materials as iron ore and cost effective labor. The steel sector has been a major contributor to India's manufacturing output. The efforts of private entrepreneurs, aided by foreign direct investment and liberalization, the steel industry in India received a big boost. The annual production of steel is anticipated to exceed 300 million tons by 2030 to 2031. As a result, it is anticipated that per person steel consumption will grow to 160 kg. The infrastructure industry accounts for 9% of total steel consumption in India and is expected to increase 11% in 2025 to 26. The automobile industry accounts for 10% of the total demand for steel in India. The capital goods sector accounts for 11% of the total steel consumption and is expected to increase to 14 to 15% by 2025 to 26. The oil and gas sector is one of the largest end users of steel. Indian steel industry production in million tons. Indian steel industry import of total finished steel. Data on imports of total finished steel is given below for the past 5 years. India is importing finished steel as it is insufficient in meeting its growing demand and is not able to meet the quality requirements of certain industries which require high grade steel. Indian steel industry export of total finished steel. Data on exports of total finished steel is given below for the past 5 years. Tata Steel is India's leading producer of high quality steel with significant vertical integration and raw material linkages for its Indian operation. JSW Steel is well known for its diversified product mix with a large share of higher value added products in the sales mix and company opportunistic shift between export and domestic markets. Recent government initiatives in the steel sector. In October 2021, the government announced guidelines for the Approval Specialty Steel Production Linked Incentive Scheme. With a 5-year financial outlay of Rs 6,322 crores to promote the manufacturing of specialty steel, the government has selected around 67 applications from domestic players under the PLI scheme for specialty steel. This will attract committed investment of Rs 42,500 crores with a downstream capacity addition of 26 million ton and employment generation potential of 70,000. The PLI scheme aims to expand India's local production capacity of specialty steel products, lower import dependency, and create an export oriented production base. The scheme hopes to benefit both major integrated steel players as well as downstream manufacturing MSME entities. Under the Union Budget 2022 to 23, the government allocated rupees 47 crores to the Ministry of Steel. The budget's focus is on creating infrastructure and manufacturing to propel the industry. The Ministry of Steel is facilitating the setting up of an industry-driven steel research and technology mission of India in association with the public and private steel companies to spearhead research and development activities in the iron and steel industry at an initial corpus of rupees 200 crores. The Government of India raised an import duty on the most steel items twice, each time by 2.5%, and imposed measures including anti dumping and safeguard duties on iron and steel items. How are integrated steel plants different from mini steel plants? Smart manufacturing does not just mean having a smart factory, it is a significant transformation in the way raw material is sourced, manufactured, and marketed through horizontal and vertical supply chain. An integrated steel plant is large in one complex where everything is handled from shipping, rolling, steel making, putting together raw materials, integrated iron, and manufacturing steel means production of steel from iron ore or iron pellets. Large amount of power required by steel plants. Integrated steel plants internally generate the power for producing steel. First, integrated steel plant in India was set up by Tata Iron and Steel Company at Tata Nagar, and it was followed by the Indian Iron and Steel Company at Asansol. There are 14 integrated iron and steel plants in India. Out of these, 4 are in the private sector and others are in the public sector. Singhbhum Iron Fields of Jharkhand and Keonjhar iron fields of Orissa provide the nearby plants with iron ore. Major steel plants are concentrated in Chota Nagpur Plateau because this region is rich in iron ore and coal. An integrated steel plant can manufacture better and more high quality steel plants. The integrated steel plants can bring the raw material from own captive mines, has control of quality, and provides superior quality steel products. The raw material from own mines makes it cost effective than those produced from many steel plants. Apart from that, the integrated steel plants mostly use automated rollers while casting, and the process is continuously monitored, which helps maintaining the uniform properties of the bars. The integrated steel plants have complete control over production and delivery and makes the delivery in time. Mini steel plants are small industries having electric furnaces, use steel scrap, sponge iron. They have re-rollers that use steel ingots as well. These plants use iron from scrap steel reused from utilized cars and gear. They are involved in making mild and alloy steel of given specifications. Some advantages of mini steel plants are that they run on low maintenance, requires low investment, uses electric furnaces, thus conserving coking coal, located in industrial towns, thus reducing the transportation costs. They are eco-friendly, etc. There are around 650 mini steel plants in India. The mini steel plants meet the requirement of local market and reduces pressure on large steel plants. Downstream steel units are companies that use steel as raw materials to manufacture finished or semi-finished products that are used in various industries such as construction, automotive, packaging, among others. These units are located closer to the end user industries and operate on a smaller scale than primary steel producers. These steel units are an important part of the steel value chain as they provide customized products and services to meet the specific needs of the customers. Steel is a heavy capital intensive industry. Steel manufacturing requires a large amount of capital for installing a steel plant as well as to maintain and regularly upgrade it. In addition, the operations of the steel plant needs a larger amount of working capital because it needs a significant amount of industry at every stage of the process. Steel manufacturing is a continuous process operating continuously without stoppage. As a result, steel plants need a continuous supply of raw materials, otherwise they become inefficient operators. Steel is a capital intensive sector. Nearly INR 8,000 to 10,000 crores required to set up 1 million ton of steel making capacity through the greenfield route. If Indian steel industry is to fulfill the vision of adding capacity 100 to 150 million tons, the additional investment of INR 10 lakh crore will be required. The challenges faced by the steel industry are high cost and limited availability of coking coal, poor productivity of labor, irregular supply of energy, poor infrastructure. Challenges in the steel industry. Some of the entry exit barriers faced by the steel industry are as follows. Steel industry is a labor industry and requires huge manpower to carry out daily operations. The per capita labor productivity is at 90 to 100 tons for steel industry in India. steel industry have one of the largest and heaviest inventories, thus making the supply of goods more challenging and costly. Steel industry face challenges regarding production efficiency. The Durgapur steel plant makes use of approximately 50% of its potential, which is caused by factors like strikes, shortages of raw materials, energy crisis, incompetent administration, etc. Due to low productivity, huge chunks of iron and steel are to be imported in order to meet the demands. One of the serious problems faced by the steel industry has to do with its size and supply demand balance. Towards the end of 2014, oversupply of steel by China halted the production of major steel producers of Europe and America to compensate for cheaper imports from China. The longevity of steel products could be attributed as one of the reasons of low steel demand. The long life of steel products, a minimum of 10 years depending on the product, pushes the industry to go through a cyclic phase once every 5 to 6 years. The iron and steel industry in India suffers due to irregular supply of electricity. Cost of financing any expansion or new steel capacity is usually through borrowed capital. In India, the cost of finance is extremely high compared to the cost of finances developed in countries like China, Japan, and Korea. Steel demand is cyclical. During the downturn, the return on investments gets eroded. From 2004 to 11, steel demand increased at a fast paced rate. This prompted many steel makers to expand existing capacities. However, later in the Indian steel industry faced a severe downturn between 2014 to 16 and eventually resulted in many steel makers facing bankruptcy proceedings in 2018. Tough competition from cheap exports. 2014, the Indian steel industry faced a tough competition with the unprecedented flow of cheap Chinese and Russian into the country. At that time, companies including Tata Steel and JSW Steel had to sharply cut prices.